Imagine, for a moment, a crown placed not on Napoleon's imperial head in Paris, but in Milan. A different throne, a different stage, yet the same man driven, unrelenting, and always hungry for power. In the spring of 1805, Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself not only Emperor of the French, but also King of Italy. A lesser known chapter of his meteoric rise, one often overshadowed by the grandeur of Austerlitz or the drama of Waterloo, yet one that reveals his mastery of symbolism, manipulation, and ambition. As historian Philip Dwyer once noted in Napoleon, the path to power, Napoleon understood that to dominate Europe, one must also dominate its imagination, the kingdom of Italy, forged in his image. Became both a laboratory for his political experiments and a jewel that showcased his vision of a new Europe. Tonight, we dive deep into this overlooked but extraordinary episode of Napoleonic history, the time when Napoleon sat on the throne of Italy. Napoleon's Italian adventure began not in 1805, but in the campaigns of the late 1790s, when he first burst onto the European stage as a young general leading the French armies across the Alps. These victories against Austria and northern Italy brought him not only military glory, but also political capital. The Italian territories were restructured into sister republics, designed to reflect the ideals of the French Revolution, yet firmly under Parisian control. By the time Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French in 1804, Italy was already seen as a natural extension of his sphere of power. According to historian David Chandler in the campaigns of Napoleon, Italy was both the testing ground of Napoleonist genius and the gateway through which his imperial ambitions first flowed. The coronation in Milan's Duomo on May 26, 1805, was not a mere repetition of his Paris ceremony. It was a carefully staged performance, steeped in medieval ritual, yet adapted for modern propaganda. Napoleon placed the Iron Crown of Lombardy upon his own head, a relic said to contain a nail from the crucifixion of Christ, and proclaimed the words, Dio mi el ha data, goi e kai la toca, or God has given it to me, woe to him who touches it. Unlike the Pope in Paris, no one else had the honor of crowning him. It was Napoleon himself who held the destiny of Italy in his hands. The symbolism was clear. Napoleon was both secular ruler and divinely sanctioned monarch, uniting revolutionary legitimacy with ancient tradition. Historian Stuart Wolfe, in his seminal work Napoleon's Integration of Europe, underlines that Napoleon's Italy was less about Italy itself than about the projection of his own authority across Europe. But what was this Kingdom of Italy really? Far from a unified Italian nation, it was a French satellite state carved out of northern Italy with its capital in Milan. Napoleon appointed his stepson, Hugues Ni di Beauharnais, as viceroy, ensuring dynastic control while he remained the true sovereign. Yet this kingdom was more than window dressing, it was a model for Napoleonic governance. Administrative reforms introduced in Italy would later be replicated across Europe. Centralized bureaucracy, the Napoleonic Code, standardized taxation, and secular education systems. Many Italians resented French dominance, but others recognized the modernization it brought. As the historian Martin Lyons notes in Napoleon Bonaparte and the Legacy of the French Revolution, Italy became the testing ground for reforms that would shape much of continental Europe, curiously. While the coronation in Milan might seem like a straightforward assertion of power, Napoleon's motives were more complex. The Crown of Italy served as a counterbalance to Austria, whose influence had long dominated the region. By placing himself on the Iron Throne of Lombardy, Napoleon was sending a clear signal: Habsburg power in Italy was finished. This was more than symbolic. The Kingdom of Italy provided him with an additional army, tens of thousands of troops who would march under his banners during the wars of the Third Coalition and beyond. In fact, when Napoleon faced the Austrians at Austerlitz later that year, Italian troops fought alongside the French, their loyalty cemented by this new royal bond. Historian Alan Forrest observes in Napoleon's Men, the soldiers of the Revolution and Empire, that the Kingdom of Italy was less a nation-state than a reservoir of men and resources for the Napoleonic war machine. Yet, there are little-known anecdotes that reveal just how personal this crown was to Napoleon. For instance, he took extraordinary care to wear the Iron Crown, despite its fragility. According to contemporary accounts, he insisted on donning it even when advisors feared it might fall apart. Why? Because Napoleon understood the mythic aura of relics. He wanted Italy, and indeed all Europe, to see him as heir not only to the Revolution, but also to Charlemagne and the medieval kings. Historian Andrew Roberts, in Napoleon, A Life, emphasizes that Napoleon sought to wrap himself in every mantle of legitimacy Roman, Carolingian, and Christian while never letting go of the revolutionary sword, but the Kingdom of Italy was not without its contradictions. Napoleon never set foot in many of its territories, and governance was often delegated to subordinates. Italian elites were forced to collaborate with French administrators, creating resentment, but also planting seeds of nationalist consciousness. Ironically, though Napoleon crowned himself King of Italy, he also inspired the very Italian nationalism that would one day overthrow foreign rule. As historian Lucy Ryle explains in the Italian Risorgimento, Napoleon's Italian kingdom, far from quelling aspirations for independence, inadvertently gave them form by demonstrating what a unified administration might look like. And now, dear viewer, let me pause for a moment. If you're fascinated by this hidden side of Napoleon's reign, the man who didn't just dream of empire, but also of crowns beyond France, then you're exactly in the right place. Here on Vertex of Time, we uncover the forgotten corners of history, the episodes your school books barely mentioned, and the stories that reveal the raw human ambition behind great events. So, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community of history enthusiasts. Because, trust me, the past is far stranger and far more thrilling than fiction. Returning to our story, one might ask, did Napoleon truly care about being King of Italy, or was it merely another instrument of power? The answer, like much in his career, lies somewhere in between. The crown gave him prestige, troops, and leverage against Austria, but it also gave him headaches. Maintaining control over Italy required constant military presence, heavy taxation, and political repression. Resistance simmered from guerrilla bands in the countryside to intellectual dissenters in Milan. The Kingdom of Italy was less a harmonious state than a carefully balanced act of domination. Yet Napoleon kept it alive until his final downfall in 1814, when the Austrians swiftly reasserted control. Curiously, the kingdom outlived Napoleon's reign by a few years. Even after his abdication, it lingered in the European imagination as a precursor to Italian unification. Some historians even argue that without Napoleon's Italian crown, the Risorgimento, the 19th century movement for a united Italy, might never have found its symbolic starting point. As historian Christopher Duggan puts it in The Force of Destiny, a history of Italy since 1796, Napoleon's Italy was never truly Italian, but it revealed the possibility of Italy as a nation by the time Napoleon faced his twilight, exiled first to Elba and later to St. Helena. The Iron Crown of Lombardy had slipped from his grasp. Yet the image of him, in Milan's great cathedral, holding that ancient relic aloft and daring anyone to challenge his right to rule, remained etched in Europe's memory. It was not just a moment of coronation, it was a declaration of supremacy, a theatrical fusion of medieval relics, revolutionary ideals, and imperial ambition. And here lies the great irony. Napoleon Bonaparte, a Corsican outsider who rose through the ranks of a revolutionary army, claimed for himself not only the mantle of Emperor of the French, but also the crown of Italy. He was not Italian, nor did he seek to unify Italy as Italians would later demand. Yet his reign as King of Italy left an indelible mark on the peninsula, shaping its politics, institutions, and even its dreams of nationhood. So when we think of Napoleon, let us not only recall the emperor in Paris, the conqueror at Austerlitz, or the exile of St. Helena. Let us also remember Napoleon, the King of Italy, standing in Milan, Iron Crown upon his head, declaring with unflinching certainty, God has given it to me. Woe to him who touches it. Because in that moment, Napoleon wasn't he just a man of his time, he was a man trying to bend all of history to his will. And if you want to continue exploring these incredible, but often overlooked chapters of the past, you know where to be. Here on Vertex of Time, we don't just tell history, we reveal it. Subscribe now and step with us into the hidden corridors of time where every crown has a story and every story has a lesson.